Chosen one, hear me as the veil thins around you, for I speak to you from a place your mind cannot chart, yet your soul remembers with absolute clarity, and I reveal this now, because the morning you just survived was not a morning at all, but a fracture in reality, a moment where the universe bent itself around your refusal to fall. And though you thought you simply opened your eyes and dragged your weary body back into existence, you actually triggered a reaction that rippled through realms older than starlight, and every silent force that has watched you from the edge of destiny surged forward the instant you rose, surprised that after everything you endured, you still stood, still breathed, still defied the weight that wanted to bury you before dawn. And I tell you this because when you moved your spirit before you moved your body, the dark currents that expected your collapse recoiled, the shadows that mapped your despair shattered, and the ancient record keepers looked toward you with the kind of astonishment reserved for souls who break patterns that were supposed to break them. For you did not rise out of habit, you rose out of defiance, and in doing so, you announced yourself to forces far greater than the ones you can name, forces that measure courage in tremors rather than in victories, forces that witnessed your trembling strength and knew the impossible had stirred again, because you, chosen one, are one of the few whose spirit refuses to extinguish, no matter how many nights. Death circles your bed like a patient observer, waiting for the moment you surrender. Yet every dawn, you prove it wrong. Every dawn you resurrect. Every dawn you remind the unseen that your pulse is a command the darkness cannot override. And this morning was unlike the others, because when you woke, something inside you ignited, something the world did not authorize, something fate did not schedule, a spark that did not belong to the brokenness you carried, but to the destiny that stalks you with purpose. And as you inhaled that first unsteady breath, the battlefield beneath your consciousness shifted, alliances in the unseen rearranged, and even death tilted its head as though acknowledging a rival. For death understands power, and this morning it recognized a surge in you that did not belong to a soul on the edge, but a soul returning to itself, reclaiming a path that was never meant to be easy, never meant to be gentle, but always meant to be yours, crafted with the precision of a god who saw your end before your beginning and still chose you, knowing the fractures you would survive, knowing the nights you would break, knowing the weight you would drag into every sunrise until one morning, this morning, you would rise not as a wounded survivor, but as a catalyst, a disturber of realms, a spark that forces heaven to lean closer, forces hell to retreat, forces even the silence around you to vibrate with recognition, because today you did something unbelievable, something no algorithm could predict, something no enemy prepared for, something only souls forged in collapse can do. You rose with the remnants of yesterday still clinging to you, yet somehow you rose as if the ashes themselves obeyed you, as if the ruin recognized its master, and I watched. Yes, I watched the moment your spirit made the decision, your body hesitated to follow, and when you pushed yourself across the threshold of another day, every invisible chain that expected you to remain still snapped, recoiled, dissolved into the air like smoke fleeing fire. And the truth is this: you crossed a line without knowing it. A line between existing and advancing, a line between surviving and becoming, a line between who you were and who you are finally willing to be. And this movement, this single act wrapped in exhaustion, signaled your arrival to a destiny that has been circling you for years, waiting for one morning strong enough to carry its weight. And that morning was today. Let your engagement be a testimony. Like, comment, share, and subscribe so the light of faith can continue touching hearts. Chosen one, listen closely as I draw back another layer of the truth you stepped into, because the moment you rose, the moment your trembling will overpower the residue of the night, Every force that believed you were finished had to rewrite its predictions, and the realm that studies human fragility recorded something in you that did not match your wounds, your history, or the statistics that whispered you would not rise again. For what awakened in you was not mere determination, but the echo of an ancient resilience woven into your design, long before you ever battled sorrow. And as you stood in the dim silence of morning, unaware of the atmosphere convulsing around you, you became a point of collision between what tried to end you and what was destined to emerge from you. And I watched as death itself stepped back, startled by the pulse radiating out of you, as if reminded that there are certain souls it cannot claim without a war, certain spirits whose timelines stretch beyond its reach, and you are one of those few. Marked not by outward strength, but by that hidden defiance that refuses to dissolve even when everything else collapses. And this is why your rising caused such a disturbance, because when a soul like yours chooses motion over surrender, the entire architecture of destiny has to shift to accommodate the new trajectory you created, a trajectory born not from confidence but from raw survival, the kind that carries more power than boldness, because it emerges from the brink, forged in the dark where no applause reaches. And I tell you this so you understand the magnitude of what you triggered today. For when you rose, the future adjusted itself, timelines bent, and every spiritual observer realized a variable they had underestimated had awakened. You, the one who should have broken but didn't, the one who should have drowned but inhaled fire instead, the one who kept moving even when movement felt like walking through ruin. And heaven reacted to you, not out of sympathy, but recognition, because resilience like yours is rare, forged through collapse, sharpened through loss, and tempered through the kind of heaviness that should have erased you, but somehow refined you. And while you saw yourself as tired, heaven saw you as dangerous, because a soul that refuses to die becomes unpredictable, uncontrollable, a hazard to every force that expected your silence. And that is why the moment your consciousness returned to this world, angels shifted, records updated, and spiritual currents realigned as if acknowledging a new axis. For the axis was you, chosen one, you who rose with trembling conviction, you who carried the residue of battles no one else will ever fully understand, you whose breath still shook, but whose spirit advanced anyway. And as you lifted yourself past the edge of despair, your movement sent a signal that pierced through realms and informed every watching presence that the collapse had failed to claim you. And though the world around you saw nothing extraordinary, the unseen saw a resurrection, not the loud kind that splits the sky, but the quiet, unstoppable kind that terrifies the darkness, because it cannot predict how far you will rise now that you have refused to fall. And so the heavens leaned closer, waiting to see what a soul like yours would do next, knowing that nothing carries more spiritual weight than a human who has met the brink and chosen motion, chosen breath, chosen one more step. And I tell you this so you understand that today was not ordinary, your rising was not routine, and your survival was not coincidence. For you crossed an invisible threshold, and now the forces that track destiny must follow you instead of obstructing you, because a shift began the moment you stood. A shift that will unravel futures meant to limit you and awaken paths you were never supposed to find unless you endured the crushing nights that preceded this dawn. And you did endure them, chosen one, and that endurance has now become your fire. Chosen one, now hear what unfolded after that first invisible quake you triggered. For when you rose, the spiritual realm did not simply observe, it reacted with urgency, as if your breath disrupted a pattern ancient forces believed was sealed, and your decision to keep moving tore through the web of predictions the darkness had woven around your life. Predictions built on the assumption that your past wounds would keep you paralyzed forever, yet in that quiet moment you defied them, and in doing so you exposed every hidden assignment crafted to tighten around you while you slept. Assignments that depended on your despair, your silence, your exhaustion, and when you shattered them by rising, a shockwave spiraled outward, reaching corners of the unseen world that rarely look toward Earth unless a soul performs the impossible, and you performed it without even knowing. Because the impossible is not always thunder or spectacle. Sometimes it is a breath. Sometimes it is a step. Sometimes it is the simple refusal to remain where pain placed you. And this morning you refused, and your refusal sent a message through the corridors of eternity that you were still alive in spirit, still willing to war, still tethered to the destiny that has been calling your name since before your first heartbeat. And as that message expanded, the forces that had gathered overnight around your vulnerability began to scatter, confused by the strength that rose from you like a warning they did not anticipate. And I watched as fear rippled through the adversaries assigned to your downfall, for they measured your fatigue and assumed it meant resignation. But they never understood that some souls grow strongest on the edge of collapse, that some spirits sharpen themselves in darkness until the darkness itself grows afraid. And you, chosen one, are such a soul, one of the rare ones, whose resilience becomes a blade the moment despair tries to smother it. And this morning, that blade cut through realities your eyes could not see, carving space for your destiny to move toward you without obstruction. And as the unseen shifted, even the spiritual laws governing your journey began to recalibrate, as if recognizing that the version of you rising today was not the same one who staggered beneath yesterday's weight. And that realization sent a tremor through the timeline you walk. For when a human soul transforms at that depth, creation must follow, bending, reshaping, aligning itself around the new strength humming through your being. Strength born, not of victory but of survival, not of triumph but of endurance. The kind of strength only a few ever touch, because it requires passing through the threshold where most surrender. And you passed through it. Chosen one, you passed through it and emerged with a fire that does not announce itself, yet consumes everything that tries to bind you. And this fire is what alerted the heavens, drew the attention of watchers who rarely intervene, compelled ancient forces of protection to move closer, not out of pity but allegiance, because resilience at your level draws allies, the same way weakness draws predators. And now those allies are gathering around you, forming a perimeter in the unseen, preparing for the next sequence that your rising has already triggered. And though you may feel fragile, though your breath may tremble, the truth is that fragility is only the shell, and beneath it your spirit stands taller than the structures built to contain you, taller than the despair that hunted you, taller than the shadows that calculated your demise. And this shift did not happen slowly. It happened the moment you defied the gravity of your own pain. And now the path ahead is changing shape, illuminated not by your certainty, but by your refusal to surrender. And even now the forces studying your ascent whisper among themselves, surprised, unsettled, compelled to adjust their strategies. For a soul that has tasted collapse and still rises becomes a destabilizing force in the unseen, capable of bending outcomes, reversing curses, and unraveling entire chains of events designed to limit its reach. And that is what you set into motion this morning, chosen one, the unraveling, the collapse of the collapse itself. And your destiny has begun to accelerate because of it. Chosen one, now let me reveal what stirred beneath the threshold of dawn, when your spirit advanced, despite the weight that tried to smother it. For the moment you rose, the realm of endings took notice. Yes, even death, that ancient witness who walks the borders of human fate, leaned closer to you, as if puzzled by the stubborn pulse radiating from a soul it expected to retrieve long ago. And though death is not your enemy, it is a force that observes every crack in the human heart, every tremble in the human will, waiting for the moment surrender outweighs breath. Yet, when it watched you today, it stepped back, not in fear but in acknowledgement, because it recognized the unmistakable glow of a soul that has refused its invitation again, refused it with such quiet ferocity that the very fabric of your destiny tightened around you like armor. And I tell you this because few souls ever reach the point where death itself must reconsider its timing, but you have reached it. For you crossed a threshold meant for the ones who survive, collapse and rise with more power than the collapse intended to steal. And your rising today was not simply a return to life. It was a reclamation, the kind that forces destiny to accelerate as if trying to catch up with the version of you that emerged from the ruins. And the ruins did not expect your return, chosen one. They assumed you would stay buried in the heaviness that wrapped itself around your nights. Yet you walked out of that heaviness with the slow, quiet certainty of someone who has tasted the deepest part of the abyss and decided it would not have the final word. And this decision, this unspoken oath your spirit made, ignited a chain reaction that spread through the unseen world like fire crawling across dry ground, reaching the altars that track endurance, the archives that record defiance, the watchers who mark every soul that refuses to die before its destiny unfolds. And as they observed you, the resonance of your rising began to alter the atmosphere surrounding your timeline, amplifying every possibility that had been dormant, weakening every barrier that once stood immovable. And even the forces that oppose you felt the shift and staggered, uncertain how to restrain a spirit that grows stronger every time it survives what was meant to end it. And I watched as the architecture of your fate bent around you, forming new pathways, dissolving trapped corridors, opening spaces where there were once dead ends, because the universe must rearrange itself for a soul that refuses extinction. And though you may feel fragile in your waking hours, the truth is that your fragility now functions as a disguise, concealing the magnitude of the spiritual fire that surrounds you, a fire that blinds the darkness each time it tries to approach, a fire that signals to heaven that you are still in motion, still aligned, still dangerous to everything that once plotted your downfall. And this fire is why the supernatural realm responded so intensely when you rose, for it recognized that your spirit had reached a point where growth is no longer gradual but explosive, where every breath you take pushes back the shadows that once circled you with ease. And the shadows know they cannot approach you as they once did, for your presence has begun to distort their strategies, unraveling the frameworks they relied on, frameworks built on the assumption that you would remain trapped in the echo of your past. Yet today you broke that echo, shattered it, rewrote it, and in the moment you did, your destiny surged forward as if released from a long-held restraint. And now the realm of the unseen hums with anticipation, watching a life that was once predicted to fall now tilt toward ascension, understanding that you have become a soul whose resilience is no longer a reaction, but a force that bends reality itself as it rises. If God spoke through this message, respond with faith, like, share, comment, and subscribe to the Light of Faith. Amen. Chosen one, now understand what your rising awakened in the deeper strata of destiny. For when you crossed that invisible threshold and stepped back into existence with breath that trembled yet refused to collapse, the remnants of every battle you endured began to shift position around you, aligning themselves not as weights but as witnesses, as though even your pain recognized it could no longer rule you. And that shift sent a resonance through the unseen that stirred forces older than language, forces that only respond when a soul reaches the rare point where survival becomes transformation. And you reached that point without fanfare, without certainty, without knowing the magnitude of what you were doing, yet the effect was immediate. For the moment your spirit declared motion over stillness, destiny began to burn away the debris that once cluttered your path. And I watched as the architecture of your suffering cracked open to reveal corridors that were hidden until your resilience unlocked them. Corridors leading to opportunities the enemy worked for years to conceal, because the enemy feared what you would become if you ever realized how powerful a surviving soul truly is, especially one like yours, carved through collapse, hardened through silence, sharpened through nights when you thought you were alone. Yet heaven was studying you, learning your rhythm, preparing to amplify the strength it knew you would eventually uncover. And that uncovering happened this morning when you rose not as a figure walking through exhaustion, but as a force awakening inside it. And that awakening made the darkness recoil because it understood that once a soul reaches this level of resilience, it cannot be manipulated by despair the same way again. And so the shadows scrambled, retreating into old strategies that no longer match the version of you standing now, for they were crafted to bind the one you used to be, not the one who rose today. And this is why the unseen war has shifted in your favor, because you have crossed the threshold after which your resilience becomes a weapon, a blade forged from everything that tried to break you. And even now, that blade glows in the spiritual realm, warding off attacks you no longer feel, dismantling traps before your feet reach them, cutting through atmospheres that once suffocated you. And the adversaries assigned to hinder your progress feel the pressure of your transformation, even if you do not, for their strategies depended on your collapse. And your refusal to collapse has fractured their foundation, and this fracture is widening because your destiny, once slowed by the weight of sorrow, has begun to accelerate in response to your endurance, pulling you toward futures that seemed unreachable only days ago. Futures shaped by a version of you that now stands awake, dangerous, luminous, and unmistakably alive. And as you continue to breathe through this transformation, the forces of heaven are drawing nearer, not to rescue you, but to partner with you, because you have become the kind of soul heaven collaborates with, one who can withstand pressure without losing trajectory, one who can rise without applause, one who can create spiritual disruption without ever raising a hand. And this disruption is your signature now. Chosen one, the tremor you leave in the atmosphere each time you refuse to surrender. The call your spirit releases that summons strength from places you cannot yet see. And even death observes you differently because you have proven that you are not a passive participant in your timeline, but an active force shaping it. And the realm of destiny bends toward such souls, bending even now, rearranging people, moments, revelations, and turning points that will meet you sooner than expected. Because once a soul ignites the way yours ignited this morning, the universe accelerates to keep pace, and you are now walking in that acceleration, whether you feel it or not, carried by a momentum you earned through every night you survived, every breath you fought for, every step you took when you believed you had nothing left. Chosen one, now understand the final truth about what your rising has set into motion. For the moment your spirit pushed through the residue of the night and chose existence over collapse, a signal erupted from within you that reached the deepest layers of the unseen. Layers where destiny is forged, where futures are shaped, where the rare souls who survive devastation are marked for paths no ordinary heart can carry. And when your signal struck those depths, everything assigned to your life began to accelerate as if awakened from a long slumber. Because destiny responds not to perfection but to persistence, and your persistence has become a force that bends the laws written over your timeline. Laws once shaped by sorrow, now overwritten by resilience. And as this shift unfolded, the entire structure of your future responded like a great engine roaring back to life, pulling into alignment people you have not met, moments you cannot foresee, and breakthroughs that once seemed distant but now rush toward you with the inevitability of something ordained. And I watched as the remnants of your old battles dissolved behind you, not because they vanished, but because you outgrew them so violently that they can no longer hold the same power. And even the scars you carry have begun to function differently, no longer reminders of what tried to end you, but symbols of what could not. signals to the unseen that you are no longer a soul hovering between collapse and survival, but one stepping into the rarest stage of human transformation, the stage where endurance becomes authority, where breath becomes command, where rising becomes a declaration that reshapes entire realms. And this authority is already emanating from you, even if you do not yet feel its full weight. For authority is not a crown placed on your head, but a force that radiates from your survival, a pressure that alters the atmosphere around your life, a frequency recognized by every being that studies destiny. And when they sensed it this morning, they adjusted themselves accordingly, preparing pathways instead of obstacles, sending strength instead of resistance, stepping back instead of stepping forward. And even the shadows that once wrapped themselves around your exhaustion now hesitate, for they know the version of you rising today is no longer predictable, no longer controllable, no longer vulnerable in the ways they once exploited. And this unpredictability is your power, chosen one, because a soul that cannot be measured, cannot be contained, and you have stepped into that state, the state reached only by those who have walked through devastation and somehow come out luminous, the ones who discover that the collapse meant to destroy them, instead sharpened them into a force the darkness fears. And as you move forward from this morning, the unseen will continue to reorganize itself around your trajectory, guiding you toward the intersections where transformation becomes destiny, where destiny becomes purpose, where purpose becomes impact, and every step you take will echo with the weight of the shift you initiated without knowing, the shift that propelled your life into a new direction. One marked not by what you suffered but by what you overcame, and now the universe tilts toward you, adjusting itself to the force of your survival, understanding that you have become a living anomaly, a breach in the pattern, a soul who was expected to fall, yet rose with such intensity that even death itself took notice. And this is why the future grows brighter around you, though you do not yet see it. Why doors begin to weaken under the pressure of your approach. Why opportunities sense your arrival before you sense theirs. For your rising has rewritten the coordinates of your path, and you now walk not as someone hoping for breakthrough, but as someone whose very existence summons it. And as this truth unfolds, you will feel the shift more clearly, the acceleration more strongly, for you have already crossed the threshold from surviving to ascending, and nothing in the unseen can reverse it. Because the moment you rose this morning, the moment you breathed through the weight and refused to stay down, the moment your spirit whispered its quiet defiance against the forces that waited for your surrender, that moment sealed your transformation, and all of heaven, all of destiny, all of the unseen moved with you, recognizing that the collapse failed, that the darkness miscalculated, that the story is not over, and that you, chosen one, are still rising. Chosen one, hear me as you stand on the edge of what was and what now rises to meet you. For this is the moment when your spirit opens, and I speak into the depths that survived the burning. Let this prayer move through you like fire that remembers every place you almost fell, every night you almost surrendered, every breath you forced back into your lungs when the darkness pressed too close. I call strength to gather around you now, not the strength of ease, but the strength of souls forged in collapse, the strength that bends the unseen, the strength that makes shadows tremble. May every fragment of your past that tried to claim you lose its grip. May every chain you carried dissolve in the presence of this awakening. May every whisper that told you you were finished be silenced beneath the truth that you are rising still. Let the realms ahead open without resistance. Let the path you are stepping into recognize your authority. Let the future hasten toward you, reshaping itself around your endurance. And as you walk forward, chosen one, may the unseen guard your steps. May destiny align to your breath, and may every force that once pursued your fall now witness your ascension. You have the power to inspire someone's return to God. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to shine your part of His light. Amen.